Hello and welcome to this tutorial about Pencil 2D. Pencil 2D is a free animation software. It's in development, so there's stuff which could change, especially since I'm not using the latest version of Pencil here, but the most stable one, which is version 0.4.4b. So you might want to take this into account if you have any issues about the program, although I would be very pleased to answer your questions in the comment section. So let's get started. So on the left here you can see you've got a toolbox, and I'll go through the different tools one by one. So the first one is the pencil tool, which only works on bitmap layers. If you use it on a vector layer you'll only get a path, which is not much use here. The next tool is the draw tool, which is pretty much the same thing as a pencil, except it works on both layers. Next is the eraser, which as you can see erases, and on vector layers it kind of works bizarrely, because basically if you have one trait like that, it erases bits of it and sometimes the entirety of it, so you kind of have to watch out for this, but it's okay. I mean, it's pretty neat anyway. Then you've got this, which is not usable on vector layers. As you can see, it just does nothing, but it's basically a brush tool which you can set to have different values. So you can see here it's a big fat brush with a feather effect which you can increase or decrease. So you see, if I increase feather, it fades away slower, as you can see here, whereas, well, you can also decrease and increase the size. And let's just try different settings. For instance, see, didn't decrease the size, but you can still see there's quite a big old difference between this and this, just because we changed the feather setting. So anyway, then there's this, which is I can't quite remember the name. It's, I think, polygon, something like that. Anyway, basically you just use it to draw lines like that. So basically, if you want to draw a straight angle, you need to do this, then immediately after hit again, and that will do a right angle. See, a sharp edge. Whereas you can also draw curved lines. Well, it takes a little bit of getting used to, so yeah, you might want to try it out for yourself. Anyway, next is the erase all button, which you've already seen me use, just to get rid of everything on a particular frame or layer, or I mean a frame on a layer, of course. So next we have the color pick tool, which you can see here. Now let's just put some color on a random frame, like right here, and you see what the color pick tool does. It picks a color, and if you click on the color, it will pick it for you. So let's just experiment with that. See, oh, changes to red, changes to yellow. Yeah, and then next is the bucket fill tool, which works a little bit bizarrely, because basically you have to be really careful when you're using a bitmap layer. It doesn't let me just move this. Okay, so you can also move bitmap layers between each other. So select the layer and then move. See, that's how it works. So if you have two bitmap layers stacked above each other, you have to be careful, because if you draw something and want to fill it up, it will in fact fill the layer behind it. So one way to not do that, not make that happen, is simply well, take your second bitmap layer and put it in front of another layer, such as a vector layer, and that will, well, make it work properly. I mean, properly. It's in fact an intended feature. It's supposed to mimic traditional animation, but anyway, it's kind of annoying sometimes. So there you go. That's how you do it. And vector layers, on the other hand, it's kind of the same way. It works the same way, but, well, we have to be careful, because if you have gaps, it will give you an error message, and the way you can check for gaps is pressing F1 or FN F1, and, well, you can see the outline of your vector. Now let me just show you what will happen if you don't do this properly. Well, yeah. Okay, so it kind of looks like it's actually filled. There's no gap, but if you check, there is in fact a huge gap. So what will happen now is it will tell me this: there is a gap in your drawing, or maybe you have zoomed in too much. It will not work if you well, you see, now it will work because it's properly filled, properly no gaps. On the other hand, if you just have your shape slightly out of your canvas, it won't work because I don't know. It's just the way pencil works. All you need to do is put it back into the center of your canvas, and there you go. Undo this, so you see there's a gap again now, even though it doesn't really look like it. Now, if you zoom out a lot, if you zoom out a lot more, no, okay. Some of the bugs are kind of hard to replicate. Oh, there you see, it just filled it in because it kind of forgot about the holes, and that's another way to solve that problem. If you can't find a hole, a gap, then you can just zoom out a lot. And next are a few tools I'll explain a bit later because, well, basically it's yeah, select, move, and we'll move the whole. Well, that's in fact that tool here is basically grabs the canvas, and you can move the canvas around, and as I already explained, you can rotate, zoom, and do stuff like that. So you can't really do any motion tweening, as I already mentioned earlier. So, well, if you have an object like a background or something that moves at a constant rate and doesn't change, you really don't have much of a choice other than just copying whatever you want to copy and put it on the next frame, and so on. Really, it's kind of boring, but that's the only way you can do it. Now, this last tool here is called the Modify Curve tool, and what it does is it modifies curves on vector layers. So here you can see, well, let's just draw another curve just for fun. Then you select the tool and click on the random vector, and then you can select points and modify them individually, which is cool because, you know, it's cool. There's a box here you've probably noticed already which says size with pressure. What this does, pretty obviously, is it toggles on or off the feature of sizing your drawing, your trait, in function of the pressure you apply to your pen. So you can see here this has been drawn without sizing with pressure, so it's constantly the same thickness. Now if I do this, it'll change, and you can see if I press like a fucking doofus on my pencil, it changes the size, whereas if I draw very gently, it's pretty fine. Now as you can see, this doesn't really work very well yet on vector layers. You can see there it kind of went a little bit bonkers, and yeah, but it works fine on bitmap layers. Anyway, the difference between the two layers here is, as I already explained, sort of, bitmap layers are pixels. Basically, whatever you draw on a bitmap layer will be transformed into pixels. So if you zoom in, you see pixels. Well, that's fine if you want to do sketches and stuff, but if you really want to have some neat and sharp animation, you should probably use a vector layer, because everything you draw on a vector layer is turned into a vector, and therefore if you zoom in, you see no pixels at all, you see? So yeah, also zooming in is done by taking this tool here, pressing Control, and then in or out, okay? So yeah, that's one thing you need to know. And also using Alt turns it around, rotates the scene. So that's that. It's completely wonky, but anyway, we can just undo that. Undo is in Edit, of course, so there you go, Edit. It's undone. 12, I guess, yes, it is. So to add a new layer, all you need to do is go on Layers here, add click plus, and then you can choose between bitmap layers, vector layers, sound layers, which don't work on Windows, at least not on this version of Pencil, and last but not least, a camera layer. Now, the way a camera layer works is basically you use it to define the size of the images you are going to export. So here you can see I can zoom in, zoom out, and using Alt, as I already mentioned, you can rotate it. And you can also set a custom size for your image. So you see you have 640 by 480, you can change that, of course. And then Well, let's just do a little test. So if you add another frame further down the timeline and change it slightly, you can see the program calculates a path for your image to follow, which is smooth and based on what you told your camera layer to do. So that's pretty cool. You can also, well, zoom in, of course, zoom out, which we'll do, and rotate it, and up. So you see it does that, which is cool. And then from that you can export your movie to well, using the file tab here, export image sequence or movie. Movie doesn't work on Windows, but I think it's actually better to export it as an image sequence, simply because using an image sequence you can then put all your images in Windows Movie Maker, which is what I do, and set custom times for your images, which is really cool because that allows you to tinker your animation and well, yeah, set custom times for every frame. So yeah, that's pretty cool, because otherwise if you didn't do that and export it as a movie, you'd have 13 FPS throughout your entire movie as it is set here. So I think that's pretty cool. Okay, we have nothing in fact on those frames anyway, so yeah. Okay, so this is a bit weird. You see this bitmap, this camera layers displays nothing, even though we know we've drawn stuff. So that's a little bit weird, because at first when I first encountered that, I kind of panicked and I was like, what? So in fact it's just because you're not centered onto what you've drawn, and that's all. It's pretty stupid, but I kind of got fooled by it. Also, you may notice there's a little button here which you can use to show or display or not display layers. So this button acts on every layer except the layer you are currently on. So you can see we're currently on the vector layer here. Let's just draw something on this vector layer just so we can see. Let's draw a flower. And if you choose to change this, it'll if it's full black, it'll display the layers around it. If it's nothing, it won't display any layers around it. And if it's transparent, it will display the layers as a transparent background or foreground, depending on where the layer is. And of course you can also do this on individual layers at a time, so you can do this on the bitmap layer, for instance here. You can also rename layers if you want by double clicking them like I just did, because I went too fast. But if you don't, you can just do it slowly and change that. Now let's begin animating, sort of. Since, well, basically what you need to start an animation is a layer, of course, a frame, a first frame, which you can see here on the timeline, and for this animation we'll draw, I don't know, what should we draw? A car, okay? Let's have a fancy old car with the, like that, up, and there you go. So I want to have this car moving along. What the hell did I do here? Oh. Now that's one thing you need to know. Sometimes it doesn't actually, your drawing doesn't appear all the time, so all you need to do is, well, draw a random thing like that and then do Control Z, and it'll just, well, I don't know, refresh the program and make your drawing appear. So anyway, that's our first frame. So then you just go to the next frame, add a new key, use onion skin here, see, click, and that will show the previous frame, and draw it again. And you know, there you go. So of course pencil can't do motion tweening, all that kind of stuff, or anything Flash can do, but yeah, it's just basically frame by frame animation, and then you can do the same on a pencil, on a vector layer, of course. Let's see, well, let's have a ball instead, because then add a new frame and have another ball. So you see, that's how it works. You can preview, of course, your animation in the timeline. So to do this, just click play. You can also loop it, so play and loop. See, and you can change the FPS here, just to well, like experiment a little bit. Okay, well, let's just do some coloring and stuff. So you see, this is a vector layer, so it's quite sharp. It looks like a vector. It's a bit weird. So of course if I drew this on this layer, it would have done something like this instead. So there's a comparison. Okay, so another bug is if you zoom out a lot again, then your vectors will start to get really weird. If you zoom out a lot, your vectors won't be calculated properly. So if you see I do this, of course now it works, but if I continue doing some stuff, jeez, what the hell? Zooming out more, a tad more maybe. Okay, well, I don't know. That's interesting. Well, okay, you kind of saw it here. See, it did some weird shit. But yeah, the solution is basically you should avoid zooming out too much. It's kind of bizarre. I can't really manage to replicate the bug here. Usually it's a lot messier than that. It's a lot more of a pain in the dick than that. So anyway, that's one thing you might want to know. On the right hand side you can see the colors you can select. You can modify them individually by changing those parameters here, as you can see. But you can also create an entirely new color by pressing the plus button here and faffing around with those settings or using presets here. Then add custom color and okay. And there you go, you got a new color. Now you'll need to save your palette because it won't, if you close pencil it won't save it. So to do this, go in export, palette, and there you go. I won't do it of course because I don't care about this palette. Now there is a settings tab in edit and then preferences, in fact it's called, and there are quite a few cool features. So for a start you can change the opacity of the whole pencil window, so you can change it. And if you have, for instance, a program or an image with an image open behind it, you can like copy it and do stuff like that, and that's pretty damn fucking cool. Well, of course you have to kind of what the fuck. Okay, great. Oh yeah, it's because I'm not on the actual program anymore. There, so you can set it back to full opacity. Then you can change also your background. Do stuff like this, which is pretty useless, but who cares. And you can also change the vector curve smoothing here, which is basically how much your curve is going to be smooth when you draw a vector. So let me show you this. Let's undo size with pressure, select black, go back to our settings, and draw a curve like this. You see, it's not very smooth at all. But if I changed that to a very high smoothing like this, that would be pretty terrible. It would actually smooth it quite a lot. But well, you can see it actually modifies the lines. Now, one thing pencil does not allow you to do is complicated backgrounds and stuff, so that's why I use GIMP to do my backgrounds. And then what you can do is use this little handy feature which says import. Well, you can import a palette, but you can also do import image here in the edit tab instead of the file tab. Import image, and then choose an image to import from whichever files you have. Like that, for instance. Well, this is actually a background I made in pencil. But yeah, you can let me find one that I did not make in pencil, like this one for instance. And this is not a vector image, in fact you need to do it on a bitmap layer, which I did not do, so let's just do that. And there you go. Now I've got a neat background, which is okay. So yeah, that's pretty much all you need to know about pencil. So don't forget, ask questions in the comment section. I'll try and answer them the best I can. Also, you probably noticed my English is not really the best, but that's because I'm not actually a native English, well, sort of, it's complicated, but my mother tongue is French. And anyway, that's just a little disclaimer regarding the various mistakes I made in this video. Also, don't forget to drop a little like if you enjoyed this tutorial, and go watch some of my other animation, because yeah, I do animation too, in case you're wondering. So yeah, thanks for watching, bye.